Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's discussion, the importance of Indigenous knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us. We apologise for any of the technical issues that you experienced with our planned live stream event on Saturday. My name is Felicity, and I'm from the audience engagement team here at the NGV. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's discussion, Miles Russell Cook. Miles is the curator of Indigenous art at the NGV, and I will hand over to him now to introduce the program and the speakers. Thank you, Miles.
Thanks, Felicity, and hello, everybody. So my name is Miles Russell Cook, and I'm curator of Indigenous art at the NGV, and I'm actually filling in today for my colleague and fellow curator, Hannah Presley, who is unfortunately unwell. I'm unwell too, but she definitely was more unwell, so I ended up here with you today. So today is a talk that we're going to be doing with three extraordinary panelists. So I'm joined by Clinton Naina, who is an extraordinary artist who has work in the current NGV exhibition Big Weather, curated by Hannah. Kent Morris, extraordinary Buckinji man living on Yalukit Willem country in Melbourne, also a fabulous artist with wonderful work in our collection. And Zena Cumpston, who is a Buckinji woman and a writer, consultant, educator, and researcher. Rather than me introducing the bios of all of our fabulous speakers today, I thought it might be nice if you all just introduced yourselves and told the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do before we jump into our conversation, looking at Indigenous knowledge and the importance of Indigenous knowledge when looking at the challenges that we face with a changing climate. So I might throw first over to you, Kent, if you wanted to just introduce yourself.
Thanks, Miles, and hello everyone. My name's Kent Morris. I was born on Bindal and Woolgarooka country in Townsville. My ancestral homelands are on the lands of the Barkindji people in Burke, which is northern Barkindji. So Barker means river. We are people of the river, and that river is the Darling Barker from Wentworth up into Burke and out as far as Menindee and Broken Hill. I'm an artist, as mentioned, and I also lead an extraordinary organisation called The Torch that supports Indigenous offenders and ex-offenders through an art and cultural program. So very happy to be here for this discussion today.
Thanks, Kent. It's lovely to have you here. And Clinton, would you mind just introducing yourself and telling audiences a bit about who you are and your work?
Hello, my name is Clinton Naina. Born and raised here in Melbourne. I descend from or belong to the Marriamura peoples of the far east of the Torres Strait and Cookle people of Western Cape York. I'm practicing artist here, performing artist, kind of work in many different mediums. And yeah, that's basically my story.
Thanks, Clinton. And Zena, welcome as well, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself too.
Sure. Thanks, Miles. Thanks for having me today. My name's Zena Cumpston. I'm a Barkindji woman from Western New South Wales, same as Kent. A lot of my family ties are from around Menindee and Broken Hill, and a lot of my family live in Menindee today. I work in lots of different roles, and in fact, at the moment, I have 3 jobs, but I'm working at the University of Melbourne as a guest curator for Science Gallery. So I'm doing a show that's all about Aboriginal knowledge. And that's going to go for a whole year and have quite a few education programs aligned with it, which I'm also working on. And I'm also working on the State of the Environment report at the moment. I'm writing underneath, I'm being guided by Terry Janke on the report and writing across quite a few of the chapters. And that's a report that comes out every 5 years to look at the state of the environment.
Thank you. So I thought I might just kick us off. Hannah has very kindly prepared some questions after talking to the panelists. And the first one I wanted to ask was to you, Zena, who, for anyone looking at home, Lou is Zena, if the name down the bottom of the screen hasn't changed. So Zena, would you mind just sharing with us a little bit about some of your research philosophies and the role that you see cultural knowledge playing in the way that you interpret and share information? Because I know that as an academic and as a researcher, cultural knowledge is really at the heart of a lot of your work. And can you talk a little bit about how you, I suppose, how what role you see the philosophies of cultural knowledge having with the information that you share?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question in lots of ways, Miles. But I guess in terms of my research philosophy, I've always been a fish out of water at Uni Melbourne, the other unis that I've worked at. I've only got an undergrad, so I'm working in academia as someone who is probably seen by many people as being, I guess, under-resourced. But I personally don't feel that way. I think that I bring a lot because I bring my own personal perspective as an Aboriginal woman to all the work that I do. And I guess the work that I've been doing the last few years has been within the realm of science, which I didn't study. But more and more I've come to understand that the cultural learnings that I've been lucky to have through my life absolutely give me the best grounding to understand how to bring our ways of knowing into the science realm. Because we've always been people who are able to move across lots and lots and lots of different realms because our knowledge systems are so holistic and we don't have, science and drama and all those things siloed. So I guess my research philosophy since I've been at Uni Melb is that I really try as hard as I can to bring a community lens into my work. So I guess in academia, you can kind of see that people are meant to be the kind of lone expert. And I definitely have pushed against that because I realise, as an Aboriginal person who hasn't grown up on country, I am really not an expert in anything. And so I've tried to bring a lot of community voices into the work that I've done over the last few years. And I see that in the tertiary system, the way that our ways of doing things are not reflected. So as much as I can in all of my work, I bring in elders and young people so that we have that intergenerational learning. And I'm just trying as hard as I can to make my work have kinship values at its core, and to really push back against some of those rigid systems that are kind of in place in the uni and can be really stifling, especially when you're trying to do things our way. And more than anything, when you're trying to make sure that there's, I guess, outcome for community that they want. It's really hard to do it within the university systems at the moment because they don't reflect our communities. And I guess the role of cultural knowledge in my work is that I just think that it brings so much value to everything that they're trying to do in the university, but also in science faculty and all of the smaller kind of units I work in. I see that we bring so much value because the way that we see things is so rich.
Yeah, and I find that really fascinating, even just kind of hearing these questions around, I guess, the distinction between Indigenous knowledge and scientific knowledge, as if they're not the same thing. I mean, Indigenous knowledge is observation-based science, 65,000 years of looking at country and of seeing how things happen and observing. And I mean, if that's not peer-reviewed, then what is? And so I guess that's really interesting, the way in which a university might see this type of knowledge as being peripheral to science or as being secondary, but actually it's at the absolute heart of science. It's older than science and more accurate. So I guess that's interesting for me, just thinking about what are these connections that exist, I guess, between culture and science, and what we can kind of learn from those connections. I thought I might just at this moment throw to you, Clinton. So Clinton, you have some work in the exhibition Big Weather. In particular, I'm thinking of your installation Stolen Climate. So can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, where the title for that work came from and how it represents some of the themes within your own practice?
Firstly, I guess the title itself sort of came to me while I was in lockdown last year, in lockdown again, giving me time to think about the situations we're living in these present times with COVID-19 and the so-called climate change. And I was just reflecting upon what we've been through as people, as my people have lived, experienced through colonisation, and to this present time, and it kind of all gelled, and I guess the penny dropped in that sense, where I started understanding who I am in this situation and where I've come from and what I represent. And with all the other issues in our communities, in our families, of deaths in custody, our children being removed, forcibly removed from our homes and communities on a huge scale these days, and all of the things that we have to deal with, I realized that the terminology used to basically soften the blow, or sweeten your tea, so to speak, like climate change and lost language and things like that, that are used upon our people and our identities, our culture, our history. And that terminology doesn't come from me or from my family or from my people. It comes from the colonizer. That's their language, to put us in their box and label us as and our culture, our language, for example, lost. It was never lost. It was stolen. And that's how this, it's the title of Stolen Climate came about. Was I soon realized that everything, just as my mother had told me, bless her, she said that, we are the most dispossessed people in the entire world. Everything that we had before colonization has been stolen. Everything. Nothing has been not touched, like untouched. It's everything that we had before white man walked on this land has been taken from us, or has been disturbed or destroyed. And the terminology used for the things like our language or our land or our children, all of that, like removed. Our children are removed, not stolen. Our language is lost, not stolen. Our climate is changed, not stolen, see? But through my perspective, through my lens, from where I stand, my positioning, it's stolen. All of my wealth has been stolen. We should be one of the richest people on the face of this earth. And we walk around today like beggars, still. And we watch our lands being raped on a daily basis. And how do we survive? What do we get back for that? Very, very little. And this continues on to this present day right now as we speak. And this has been going on since, like I said, since white men walked on this earth, on this land. And we've witnessed all of this. And so through this, I guess, experience that we are still going through, this terminology that I've used instead of climate change, of using the word stolen climate, I felt was more, I guess, it suited, and at the language itself and the terminology, to me, explain to the wider audience and my people, my family, our situation, and that through my eyes, through my knowledge, through my lived experience, and through the lived experience of my ancestors that I carry within, nothing, like I said, has been untouched. Everything has been stolen, and everything continues to be stolen. We are still fighting for what we are right, what is rightfully ours, what we're entitled to, our birthright as First Nation people, sovereign people of this country, of our countries. And that situation has, I guess, that's what has educated me and has given me that insight and has given me that knowledge to actually look at the situations we're in and that whole terminology thing and the language, because as we know, language is very important.
Yeah.
Especially in the language that we're speaking, English, and how that can, you know, mean many different things and change and turn, where in our language, the word is basically it, that's what it is. There's no other way about it. So, you know, putting that all into some sort of perspective, that's what's driven me with this, I guess, with the title itself, but then also the work. That's where it's come from, you know, where it's derived from.
It also strikes me that it's, you know, it's about truth telling, you know. I mean, when we say climate change, it's this incredibly passive and incredibly neutral way of, you know, not ascribing blame to anyone. But as we know, our ancestors did live. Exactly, and our ancestors did live sustainably for 65,000 years. That's a fact.
That's what I say to everyone.
I
say to everyone, it wasn't my black mother that you know, caused this situation we're living in, so-called climate change. It was white men, you know, and they're still doing it. Our people never did this. We never did break the land.
Yeah. So I think I might now just throw over to you, Kent. So Kent, you're also an artist, and I can see one of your beautiful photographic works behind us. So I thought maybe I would just ask a little bit about how you feel this kind of conversation around the climate and around the environment and the changes that we see intersects with your own practice. And maybe you could just introduce a little bit about the kind of ongoing research project that is your work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for those strong and beautiful words, Zena and Clinton. And I think we're looking at things in very similar ways. Of course, it's not climate change, it's climate destruction. And that idea of, you know, whether you want to call it Western science, it separates everything. And of course, Indigenous science, knowledges and philosophies that integrate and that see everything as interconnected, and the impacts of colonisation have had on that. So I try and address this in my works. And I think it's important to recognise before I go into talking about my work that these ongoing impacts that have been raised by Zena and Clinton, we feel them every day, you know, particularly I'll express around, you know, for Barkindji people and the ongoing destruction of the Barker, of the Darling River, of that whole river system, and the inability for what is described as Western science to understand how important that ecosystem is. And you can't start siloing areas off, you can't start destroying areas, you can't start to look at it as an individual element that is exploited for one outcome, which is an economy, because the ongoing maintenance of that river, which has been maintained for well over 65,000 plus years, is part of our community's responsibility. And the impacts that has on our culture and our well-being are extreme. And that's not felt every time there's a news article about it. It's felt every day. So my way of trying to address this is to highlight through the works that I do how important that interconnection is, and how important Indigenous knowledges and philosophies are in everyday life. And when we look around, how much of our knowledges and philosophies and culture are really being incorporated or coming to the fore. You can see it, just a lack of it across the entire country. So for me, that starts to look like that on country, wherever we are on country, what do I see of our culture reflected in the built environment? What do I see that's acknowledging our knowledges, our philosophies, our lived experiences, and the shared histories? It's very minimal. So my work's trying to look at a complete structural change where we don't have the ongoing destruction day to day, but we look at how Indigenous knowledges and philosophies, how do we reshape, how do we restructure the entire debate in this country about this issue around knowledge and the truth of this country. It's really interesting for me when I think about, you know, Zena and I have a shared family history that centres around Tibooburra. And if you think of that extraordinary call it whatever you will, an expedition of Sturt around finding the inland sea that just didn't exist. And every time that, I go to the junction of the Murray and the Darling on it, where our country starts in Wentworth, to see that discovery tree, there was a lack of any idea about what was already there. And this quote from Sturt always blows my mind. It's around, because he couldn't find the inland sea because there wasn't one, which Aboriginal people had told him time and again, but he took that excruciating expedition. It was an absolute inability to see the world in a different way other than through Western colonial eyes. And so this quote knocks me out. The country, in truth, is not to be understood. The country is not to be understood. So he couldn't understand it, and that meant it couldn't be understood.
Yes,
Yet, of course,
yes.
we understood that landscape and still understand it and care for it ongoing. But they're the two polar extremes that have led to where we are today, is that there's an inability to listen, there's an inability to learn, there's still an incredible amount of ignorance and savagery being perpetrated upon our country, but it's unnecessary. That the knowledges and answers and philosophies are right here and always have been.
Well, I think that's that kind of makes me want to ask a question, I guess, more broadly to the panel, which is around, I guess, how are you seeing these changes in the climate in your daily lives? Are you experiencing them, and is it something that I guess you're aware of in your daily lives? And is there any, what is the answer, I guess? I know that we can use art to draw attention, but we're also looking at something that is so existentially, this threat is a giant existential threat that is we're facing as a planet. I guess, what do you think are the answers? What is the way forward? Maybe I'll start with you, Zena.
For me, I guess I feel very helpless all of the time, and I think that I look around at what I see is happening, and I think that as a wider society, like all the people who walk on this country, black, white, everyone, I think we're all waiting for someone else to come and fix it, and that someone else is not coming. And so I really, especially with what's happened on our barker, I felt really helpless and quite distraught all the time, not knowing what to do. And, as a mother of 2 young children, I guess I really feel that, I guess, I don't know if I'm using them as an excuse, but I feel like I can't do all the things that I would have done to fight for our barker if I wasn't having to kind of be here and look after them as well. So I've kind of had to grapple with, what can I do? I guess I really, through my work and trying to educate as much as is possible, so that when we illuminate our knowledge, it hopefully has reverberations through communities, and we can at some point stop having to prove that our knowledge is as good, because as you said, Miles and Clinton and Kent, our knowledge is as good and actually better, because it's made for this place over the longest time imaginable, and it still resides in our communities. It is not lost. So I guess the only thing that I feel I can do is to continue to educate people as much as I can. But I do think that we all have to realise that no one's coming to fix this. And I really realised that recently. A very dear friend of mine, her son was killed, and he was riding around Australia to tell people that we all have to do something. And what he was trying to get people to do was to change their super and their bank accounts. And his name was Leif Justin, and you can look him up. But yeah, he was killed on the Nullarbor by a truck, and that truck driver has since been charged. But I really realised with Leif's death that this young person was not just waiting for someone else. He dropped everything and he went, and everyone he spoke to along the way, there's actually accounts on the internet now. A lot of people changed their super because they met Leif, and he said to them, we all have to do something. This is all of our jobs. So I guess for me, the answer is that we all take responsibility, because I see what's happening on our barker and no one's taking responsibility. And it's coming to a waterway near you, by the way, because this is what makes me sick. It's not just our barker. if this has happened to us, it will happen to others. And we rely on these waterways as we do the birrarung. It's, I think it's 60% or more of the water that we need to drink. And I'll tell you what's really frightening. A lot of the mob from out our area who've been over extracting forever have got money to leave there and go to other places. And Uncle Dave Wandon told me lots of them have gone to the Yarra Valley. Now that's the birrarung. And they'll continue to extract in the way that they have, because that's what their agricultural practice does. So I just think these things seem like someone else's problem, or that they're too much, or that we can't do anything. We actually can.
Yep.
I have to work out for myself, despite having to look after my children, what I'm going to do, because I'm not doing enough.
Well, it's sort of, I mean, I don't think you should separate the two things, because we are seeing that children and young people really are the ones who are absolutely leading the contemporary discourse around how we're actually going to live in the future. And, you know, was it yesterday or 2 days ago that we just saw this landmark hearing in Australia that the government has actually been held legally accountable to maintaining a climate for future generations of children. And you're just seeing all of these amazing groups of kids and young people at these climate rallies in the city. So I think certainly raising young, strong, proud thinkers is part of the solution, not something that you should see as being counter. I guess I'll next just throw to you, Clinton. I'm interested to see or to hear about whether you have actually personally just been encountering any kind of changes in the climate. Is this something that you are aware of, I guess, on the daily in your own life? Is it something that you are, is it something that you're aware of? And if so, I guess, what do you think change and the solution looks like?
Yeah, I have noticed over probably most of my life now, being an avid gardener. I love escaping the world and just being in the garden for hours, doing whatever comes to hand there. And I've noticed over the decades how my gardening and just the general practice has changed, and what grows and what doesn't, and what survives now and what doesn't, and all that kind of thing. And it's truly linked to the weather, that's for sure. And that gave me an understanding from the very, those early days of my life, being someone that was into gardening and plants and things like that. I started realizing what scientists were talking about back in the 80s, that we were coming to, what was about to happen in the near future. And so as a youngster, I took that in thinking, well, they're scientists, they know what they're talking about and so forth and what have you. And also my own knowledge being taught by my family about gardening and certain plants, especially plants that I guess thrive in the tropics, that I was trying to grow here in Melbourne. Was very hard to grow at one stage back then, back in the early 80s. But now I can just put it in the ground and it just grows. Like I don't have to baby it and nurture it and look after it the way that I used to have to, like cover it up from frost and things like that and hide it in a corner and keep it warm and safe and all that kind of thing. Now I can just put it in the ground and wherever it is and it grows. And that to me told me how much the climate had changed, how much the earth had warmed. Like the earth has become a lot hotter. And I was just measuring that through gardening and looking at that change over time, over the probably the last 30 years, and realizing right to this point now where I am, and seeing the actual weather change and seeing how the summers are different and the winters are different and spring and all of that, the autumn and what have you, and also knowing that traditionally we have more than those 4 seasons. There's colonizing seasons, and realized how that had all taken effect and changed these things. I gather that what I think really comes to mind when I think about this and how I'd like to see change and how we could impact and make a very, I guess, strong and positive change in this whole circumstances of climate change and the situation we're living in, is basically back to square one, is handing back, giving back our stolen countries, lands and waterways and what have you, and allowing us as the sovereign caretakers, our birthright and our obligation from our ancestors, that we are still here to look after our country. Now, the colonizer has disrupted that and taken us away from our country and told us we are no longer allowed to care for our country or look after it and do the things that we did or still want to do and still try to do, and they make it, you know, continuously harder and harder for that to happen. Well, all of this needs to stop. They need to actually get behind us and help us do this, because at the end of the day, what we do, what our ancestors told us and taught us how to look after country, is the only way out of this. And if they can't get their heads around that, we are on a sinking ship, because that is the only way. Because this land is ancient, our people are ancient, our culture is ancient, our knowledge is ancient, and with that comes the great strength and possibilities of dealing with any circumstances like this that come our way, because we have lived this before. We have lived through the ice ages. We have survived through all kinds of things that have been thrown at us through Mother Nature, and we still survived because we respected nature. We didn't work against it. We live with it. Now, the circumstances we're living in now is totally against that, isn't it? And it's killing it. And if they can't see that, and they can't see that our obligation of being traditional people or first sovereign peoples is to look after country. We are the ones. We should be number one right at the beginning, and everybody come behind us and help. Because if you were living on this land, you should be looking after this land just as much as we should be looking after it. But we are the knowledge keepers. We are the ancient people. And you need to stand by us, behind us, and respect us, listen to us, learn from us, and do what we tell you to do. Help us do what we tell you to do, instead of just ignoring us, pretending we're not there, and this isn't happening. You know, more days at the beach and all of this kind of thing, watching our beautiful countries burn to the ground with all of our beautiful animals, koalas and kangaroo, all of these things just burning to a crisp. This never happened before. We need that, you know, the old ways of clearing the country, burning off and all of that kind of thing that our forebears did on a regular basis to keep the country clean, so those devastating bushfires don't happen. And it's fair, it's so basic, it's so, you know, it's not the hardest thing to do, but I think it's just that whole, you know, changing from that mindset to the other, which is ours, which is the Black, you know, sovereign way of thinking about and looking after country. Because we're stuck in this colonized mindset of it's there only to be raped, and it's only ours, not yours, and you don't belong here, and you have no say, and what you say means nothing. Well, all of this is going on, but look what's actually happening. And this is the price we're paying, and we're all paying it, not just Black people, white people. We're all paying it because we all live here together. At the end of the day, like I said, we're all going to go down in the same ship if we don't actually learn how to swim, and learn how to swim from the traditional owners, custodians, our birthright, our job to look after country.
And I mean, most land management globally is run by First Nations people. You know, despite being kind of marginalized in just about every other aspect of society, it is the one kind of area where globally, you know, with almost no power, but Indigenous people are well represented in terms of land management around the world, because that knowledge is inscribed in everything we know about family. I mean, not for me personally, because I grew up very disconnected from country. I grew up in Melbourne, in Brunswick, but I mean, I just recently came back from Yirrkala, and it was really, I read this article in New Scientist about, basically the headline of the article was, "Science confirm the existence of firestick bird." And it's a particular little bird in northeast Arnhem that carries a stick, a burning twig, and drops it, and then that will light up a kind of grassland, which will flush out insects, which then the birds feast off. But it also is kind of a controlled burning, like it's a way of sustainably keeping grasses from creating bushfires. And I read this article in New Scientist that says, yeah, so like basically Western science confirms the existence of this bird. And when I went up there, all of the Yolngu mob who I speak to go, well, no shit. Like, of course we knew that birds existed. That's completely, like, whoever questioned whether that bird existed or not, we knew that. Everyone knows that birds existed. We've been watching that bird for thousands and thousands of years. And we've been writing songs about that bird and talking about that bird. Why do you need to have some white person come in and prove its existence? Just listen to the people who have already been observing and writing about and singing about and confirming. Yeah, it's kind of it's quite tragic, really, when you think about that. I guess I'll just throw to you, Kent. I'm sure we're probably getting close to being out of time. So I guess same question. I'm interested to know how you kind of are experiencing these changes in your personal life. So much of your work looks at birds and animals. In particular, it's looking at birds and that intersection between the urban and the built environment and between the different species of birds. So I'm kind of, as an avid bird watcher myself, I'm interested to know, I guess, how you're witnessing these changes. And I guess what, in the same way, what you think the solution is.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I'll pick up on a couple of things. Again, similar to Clinton, through the 80s, you saw that those changing environmental conditions and the differing impacts on plants and animals. It's been going for a long time. It's nothing new. The other points I'd like to pick up on is around fire. And again, that idea of how much we need to, this country needs to completely rethink and restructure how it goes about its business, because for First Nations Australians, for us, you know, fire is a friend in Western culture, and the way it views it, fire is the foe, it's the enemy. And so this again is, how do we change that mind point, that viewpoint, that standpoint? And again, it's interesting. Yes, my focus is often on our native birds, who are only recently, again, scientifically verified as the oldest birds on the planet. But we know them to have been here forever. And all of our stories and ideas and morality and creation stories always centre around the beautiful native plants and animals, and particularly the birds. So it was only recently, no one was looking, because everyone just thought, again, everything came outside of Australia and into it. But of course, for our, you know, songbirds, parrots and pigeons, which are a huge family of birds internationally, started here 53 million years ago. Just no one was looking. Everyone just assumed through a Western scientific lens that they came in here. But no, once that fossil was found, the truth came out that the birds originated here and then went out. So when I see people talk around, and this is, again, my work, and I think I'll get back to that point around Zena's, that helplessness that you may feel. I try through my work, as so many of our artistic practitioners do across so many fields, and so much advocacy from our thinkers around how do you actually day-to-day advocate or promote this idea of structural change, of reshaping the way people think. And so my work centers around that, because that's the way I feel I can contribute, and it gives me a little bit of pause from the pain of the destruction of our country, but to just keep trying promoting and advocating these ideas around the change needs to happen at a structural level. We need to reshape the entire debate and the way we think and feel. I'll just finish with this one. People get quite excited. You know, I see a lot of posts around, well, there's yellow-tailed black cockatoos now in Alstonwick here, and they're Glen Iris Station, and I see them coming in, you know, to the park now. People think it's fantastic, but no, very rarely do people stop and think, well, why are they here? Why? They shouldn't. They not really shouldn't be here, but their habitat has been so destroyed, so cleared, so compromised that they now have to find other places to go. You can see when people get upset about you know, I love them, the Corellas, because they link us, you know, Barkindji people through stories to the cosmos. But when you see them coming in their hundreds into Broken Hill, and people are fearful, trying to find solutions. Well, let's build a fake town out in the outback there, and hopefully they'll go over there. Well, no. What behaviours can we stop? How do we, again, reshape the structure of how we think and act so that we're not destroying their habitat? And we're, as a nation, we're creating these impacts that people see as negative. We've now got the mice through New South Wales. Well, why? You build that monoculture, you will just destroy the ecosystem, and then you're getting the impacts of it. And the questions are then, why? How do we fix it? And then the solution often creates more problems. But the solution is step right back, completely rethink, incorporate Indigenous knowledges and philosophies around how important every aspect of the ecosystem is, and that we as human beings are just part of that ecosystem. We're not at the top of the chain. We are integrated into that, and start to think differently.
Okay, so I guess I just wanted to maybe finish with asking you all one question, and let's just put aside the fact that whatever it is, 70% of global emissions come from fewer than 100 companies or whatever. But as an individual, as a person, what's one thing that you think audiences watching this talk today could take away from this and perhaps change in their own lives, or go forward with, knowing that one thing that people could take away? And maybe we'll start with you, Kent.
Good question, Miles. I think that's a ripper. And I'm always advocating for this as us being part of the ecosystem. To do what you can. You are a living part of the ecosystem. Create change, no matter what that would be. I'll just give you a really simple example. I managed to clear all the pigeons and Indian miners from my immediate neighbourhood by a simple process of clapping and making sure that they understood I didn't find that they're welcome here. And that opened up then the corridor for the native birds to come back and start populating this space. Now, some people think I'm mad. I'm walking down the street, I'm clapping away the pigeons and doves. But when they come and ask me, we have a conversation, I can see the strange looks and we'll have a conversation. And then people start to understand, right, we've changed. Clinton's point earlier, that idea of colonizing a culture is every aspect of that culture. You know, plants, animals, landforms. That's the colonial project, to actually put a whole different lens on the entire place. But you can create change within as being part of the ecosystem. Again, I'll just quickly say around planting a murnong in my neighbourhood. Well, the amount of people that talk to me and ask me about it and wanted to have that conversation, they might have been reading The Biggest Estate on Earth. They might have been reading Dark Emu, but here was this living plant that is, is close to extinction, and we are unfortunately, one of the countries with the highest level of land clearing and the most endangered animals, list. So how do we, in our own, whatever country you're on, whatever neighbourhood you're in, wherever you are part of the ecosystem. Find a way to create even small changes in your environment, and then that builds conversations with others, and you can see how that effect might roll on to bigger things.
Zena, same question to you.
Well, I guess, I totally agree with what Kent's saying. I made a plant booklet for communities and young people and anyone who wants to use it. And I think that if we all realise our responsibility, and even just that our little yards can create a really important corridor for animals that aren't able to move in the way that they need to, especially for their proliferation, because their gene pools become really small when they don't have good corridors. So if you want to have a look at that plant book, it's free and online, and you can just put in my name, Zena Cumpston, Indigenous plant use, and it should come up. But you can download it, you can print it, and it's even got labels for the garden. So I just encourage everyone to realise that even in really urban circumstances that many of us are in, we can make a difference. And also to encourage people to realise their personal responsibility for what's happening with stolen climates, and that we all have a lot we can do. And to go on to leifjustham.com, leifjustham.com. There's guides there for how you can change your super and banks to move away from places that are actively causing destruction.
Yeah, great. Clinton, would you mind finishing us off? Same question to you.
Yeah, I'm just a firm believer in self-education, and meaning, getting to know the traditional peoples of the country that you live on and their culture. become familiar with that, understand it, respect it, because ignorance, you're being compliant, you're causing harm by being ignorant. And there's no place for ignorance anymore. There's no time for ignorance. There's no excuse for ignorance. We have more at our fingertips than ever before to learn, to find out, to talk to people, to look at something, far more than any of our ancestors had before.
Yes.
So education, knowledge, knowing something that you don't know, that you should know, should be your number one aim. And that alone will help and guide you to find out more and ways, hopefully, of unraveling the problems that we face today as a collective. And when you do, I believe, understand those things, you understand yourself and your place within the collective, in the whole picture, and all the facet pieces that make up that picture. And you understand how they're all linked, that everything is linked, and the colonizers' culture is dissecting everything and putting it in a box. Where our culture is everything is one. We are all one. We're all one mob, one country, many languages, many people, and all of those things. But we, at the end of the day, country, our people, our culture is all one. We look after it, we respect it, because it looks after us and respects us. When we don't, we see what happens. We see these huge droughts, we see the bushfires, we see this so-called stolen climate change, and stolen climate, all of this that's happening. And that's the evidence. So that tells you the things that you need to know, you need to find out. And all these other, social problems that we face as well are all part of the problem as well. Deaths in custody, stolen children, stolen lives. All of these things are linked as well. They are not separate. They're all part of this big story that we live in. And we need to understand where they meet, they intersect, and how they then fold on each other, and where they take us to, and how they make a problem even bigger. And that ignorance, I was saying, back to ignorance, is the cause of a lot of trouble that we have today, because people are, complacent or whatever, and the ignorance allows them to be, and they think that that's okay. Being ignorant is, that's my way out of this problem. Well, I think that's all coming to an end. We've soon seen that will no longer, you won't be able to be this way and think that way, because it won't actually fit. You won't be a part of the picture anymore. You'll be wiped out. So you need to self-educate, understand the circumstances that are real, that we're living in a daily basis. This isn't just something that just happens once a year. This is happening every day while we're speaking right now, unfortunately. So I think that, to me, is something that's very strong and needs to be put in the forefront. That we need to educate as much as possible. We need to share that knowledge and help people that, unfortunately don't have that knowledge. We are lucky. And we're lucky that we can share it. And I think that, if we can help others to understand that circumstances, the situations of things, the more we do that, the better. And the faster we do that, the better, because the situation we're in is very crucial. We're at a very, I guess they call it a tipping point. And we need to make sure that these things happen as fast and as strong as possible.
Well, if 2020 and 2021 have taught us anything, I suppose it is that as a planet, we are capable of changing our behavior on a massive scale. So let's hope that we can see some optimism. Kent, Zena, Clinton, thank you so much for your time today and for this very heavy but very necessary conversation. And to everyone who's tuned in, again, apologies for the problems on Saturday, but we're delighted that we were able to bring you this conversation now. So again, thank you very much, all of you, for your time, and have a wonderful day. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Felicity, all good?
I hope someone hit the record button.
I know, I kept looking at it so many times because I was really worried. That was just incredible. Thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you.
After what was a pretty bit of a crazy morning, I feel like I'm going to go out into my day with a lot of things to think about that aren't technical difficulties. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, everyone. You all spoke really beautifully.
Oh, thanks, Miles. Yeah, it was good to hear everyone.
All right, I'll send out some emails on Monday as well, just with some information about invoicing and everything. But yeah, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your lockdown weekend.
Thank
you.
You all.
Take care.
Take care.
Take care.
Thanks, Miles. Thanks, Zena.
Nice
See you, Clinton.
to see you.
Bye. Bye-bye.